On the 27th day of its offensive on Gaza, Israel has killed more Palestinians and shuns ceasefire talks in Cairo. Talks were expected to be conducted through Egyptian and US officials. So, can diplomacy still end the Gaza crisis? This is Inside Story. Hello, welcome to Inside Story. I'm Hazem Sika. Well, talks in Egypt on the crisis in Gaza look likely to be pushed back as Israel steps up its offensive. Representatives from Palestinian groups, including Hamas, arrived in Cairo for ceasefire talks. Israel said it was not sending a delegation, and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu accused Palestinian leaders of misleading the international community. A US State Department representative and the Middle East Quartet's envoy also arrived in the Egyptian capital on Saturday. As Israel continues its air attacks, at least 10 people have been killed in another attack on a UN school that was being used as a shelter. And Israel's army says one of its soldiers, 23-year-old Hadar Goldin, reported missing in Gaza on Friday, is now confirmed dead. The 70-hour humanitarian ceasefire lasted just a few hours. Well, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says the offensive in Gaza will continue as long as necessary.
Hamas again mistakenly believes that the people of Israel do not have the will and determination to fight them. And Hamas again will learn the hard way that Israel will do whatever it must do to protect its people. I call on all responsible international leaders and decent people everywhere to stand with Israel now. Stand with Israel as it confronts Hamas. Stand with Israel as it defends itself against Hamas' deliberate and indiscriminate attacks on our civilians.
Well, Hamas and Israel blamed each other for the breakdown in the latest humanitarian ceasefire. It was the best hope so far to bring an end to the fighting. A skirmish over a Hamas tunnel led to the deaths of at least 2 Israeli soldiers. The UN and the US blamed Hamas for the end of the ceasefire. Well, for more on this, I'm joined by our 2 guests from Ramallah. Hossam Zomlot, Deputy Commissioner for Fatah. Hossam was part of the delegation to submit the Palestinian state status at the United Nations. And from Jerusalem, we have Yishai Fleisher, a radio host, a Voice of Israel, and columnist at Jerusalem Post magazine. Yishai also serves in an active combat reserve paratrooper unit in the Israeli armed forces. Thank you very much for being with us, both of you. Yishai Fleisher, if I could start with you, let's talk about the diplomatic aspect of all this, those talks in Cairo between a number of parties. The one group that is conspicuous by its absence is anyone from Israel. Why is that, and what prospect is there for any sort of peace if Israel isn't taking part?
Well, I think that, firstly, we've gone through many ceasefires here, and we don't want to play the fool again and have another ceasefire where we cease and they fire. So I think this time we're sitting this out. Israel is sitting out these negotiations. And I think also we're just not going to negotiate with terrorists any longer. We're going to pull back to a security zone, a buffer zone. We're going to continue operations in Gaza to stop the tunnels, to stop the rockets. But I don't think we're going to be talking a lot more until we see the cessation of violence at Israel. And I think that's the position of strength that Israel is going to have to take.
Hossam Zomlot, your response.
Well, what I just heard from Yishai confirms exactly the Israeli trajectory and behavior for many decades. The first confirmation is that Israel will continue blocking any political track anywhere. I think what Mr. Netanyahu did yesterday, the Israeli Prime Minister, in that press conference, is just try and deliver a preemptive strike against any possible political breakthrough in Cairo. Because Israel and the current Israeli government do not really want to address the real issues, that is the siege, the rights of people, the occupation, and the end the illegality in general. That's on the one hand. On the other hand, also, it confirms a longer-term trajectory of blocking any political horizon. You know, a few weeks before all these atrocities, we, the Palestinian side here, the leadership, have offered Mr. Netanyahu and the world such a unique solution, political solution to the issues in Gaza by forming a national consensus government that has the consent of Hamas and Fatah and all parties. This government has a platform of three main issues. The first is recognizing Israel on the 1967 borders. The second is renouncing violence. And the third is adhering and respecting previous agreements between the PLO and Israel. Yet Mr. Netanyahu again blocked it. The next hour when we declared our government, Netanyahu objected it publicly and declared President Abbas to be a diplomatic terror or terrorist, and therefore he has to reject it. And few weeks before that, Mr. Netanyahu was offered another political horizon, political track by Secretary of State Kerry. You remember the initiative by Mr. Kerry. And yet Mr. Kerry, by the end of the 9-month period, went to the Congress and said the following. He said, Israel, the Israeli current government, has blocked my initiative by continuing to choose the path of colonization and settlements instead of path of peace and the two-state solution. Therefore, this is a trajectory. Mr. Netanyahu is very comfortable in the military arena, and this brings me to my second point. This confirms, Hazem, absolutely the Israeli military doctrine. And the Israeli military doctrine goes like this. Whenever there is a confrontation, hit civilians, target civilians, wreak havoc in the infrastructure, the civil infrastructure, make sure that the civilian population will suffer severely, so pressure will be put on the political and resistance leadership of the Palestinians. And this, by the way, has been happening since the foundation of the State of Israel. You know, the scenes in the last few days is just reminding me that we are a nation that has been ongoing an Nakba since 1948. It never stopped. My father was a Palestinian child in 1948. He was terrorized by the Haganah, the Israeli terrorist forces.
Hossam, you bring up
with my grandfather, and now my father, the last sentence.
Well, you bring up a number of points there. You bring up a number of points there, Hossam. Sorry to interrupt, Hossam. You bring up a number of points there, obviously, and you talk as well about the targeting and the hitting of civilians by Israeli forces. And no one will doubt the amount of suffering the Palestinians have suffered in Gaza. Palestinian civilians have suffered, but the Israeli contention is these continued rocket attacks by Hamas and other groups from Gaza into civilian areas inside Israel. That is something that has to be addressed as well, isn't it?
Yes, that question needs to be addressed, but to assume that the phenomena of tunnels and rockets is a phenomena because the Palestinians in Gaza just wake up wanting to do this is just missing the point and delaying the inevitable. This phenomena is the production, the outcome of the siege, the draconian siege. The tunnels started, Hazem, they started as an act of dignity for a nation that was besieged from the air and the land and the sea, and it was an act of dignity to provide for their families, their children, basic supplies, medicine, milk for babies. And then it went into commercial, black market, because people were unable to live or to perform normally on the ground, so they went underground. And then it becomes for some military use. Primarily, I didn't see, frankly, these tunnels targeting any Israeli civilian. I saw these tunnels standing and facing up for invading soldiers armed to their teeth. And I want to tell you this on behalf of
all right,
of myself.
let's get Yishai's response to that.
My colleague on the other side of this country is talking about a union between Fatah and Hamas. That's the union of the corrupt and the terrorist, okay? When I speak, a cab driver that I just took to this offices, to these studios here in Jerusalem, when I asked him about Fatah, he said, Fatah, these are the corrupt takers of the money that's going to milk and schools and the hospitals of our areas, of places like Ramallah. Hamas, these people subject their whole population to horrible war, take every penny that the international community has given them and turn it into terror tunnels. My colleague on the other side of this line wants to tell the world that no, there's never been any attacks on Israeli civilians. I mean, that is a bold-faced lie from a corrupt organization that we know takes the money of average Palestinians and Arabs, takes it to their pockets. I'm sure that he's in America right now, when he was in Harvard just now, getting it on the, the money, the backs of the average Palestinian in the streets that's being taken away from him, and the average mother with the milk, okay? Israel is attacking back, is firing back at people who rocket at us. Sadly, in front of those fighters are children that Hamas places. It is an abominable thing, and it breaks our heart. But on the other hand, Israel will always fire back at those that fired it.
I want to get back to
strong in this area.
All right. I want to get back to the issue of what sort of a ceasefire and a lasting peace may or may not come from this, Yishai, because unfortunately when it comes to ceasefire talks, we've been down this road before, and the position from the Palestinians is that any sort of a ceasefire or any sort of a lasting peace has to address this issue of the continued blockade of Palestinians in Gaza, a blockade that's gone on for at least 7 years now, an economic blockade by sea, by air, and by land, and that in order to address any peace has to address this fundamental long-term issue rather than just an agreement to stop firing at each other.
Absolutely, Chazam, and the answer is very simple. When you look at that blockade, partially it's from Israel, no doubt about it. There's another party to that blockade, and that's Egypt, because they fear Hamas, i.e. Muslim Brotherhood, just as much as Israel does. That's why Egyptians, who are Arabs, have blocked out Hamas's transients through the Sinai and through those tunnels. They are afraid of their terrorism. We have a very unusual union right now here in the Middle East. We have a coalition of Egypt, Israel, Saudi Arabia, maybe Jordan. I mean, this representative that you have on from Fatah, he's talking about Palestinian rights and Arabs being hurt. The fact of the matter is that the Arab world is deathly afraid of the jihad mentality that people like the Hamas bring, and they're the ones that are part of that blockade. You want to lift that blockade? Talk to Arab brothers and sisters, ask them why there's a blockade on Gaza, and they'll tell you it's because of the jihad that we don't want to infect our beautiful Egypt or our Jordan or our Saudi Arabia. We want a normal life, a little bit more like Israel, and the folks from Fatah and Hamas are not going to give us that. They're going to give us more jihad, more destruction, and in the case of your guest, more corruption.
Hossam Zomlot.
What a nonsense that was uttered by your Israeli guest here. Okay, let's go with this argument. Do we have tunnels and do we have rockets here in the West Bank? Do we have in the West Bank Hamas in control? Did we have Hamas to start with 20 years ago? This has been a trajectory. We have nothing in the West Bank. We have Mahmoud Abbas, the Palestinian president, who has offered Israel repeatedly for 20 years an opportunity after another, and yet the Israeli government always chooses its very strategic path, and the strategic path is very clear to us. Forget about all spin, all this nonsense, and we will come to it. The Israeli venom that is coming out now about our civilians and about our resistance and about the situation. Put it aside. I'm not going to even waste my time to engage in it. I want to address your viewers with the reality. The reality is Israel has decided to block the emergence of a Palestinian state. Some of them rhetorically talk about two-state solution, but in reality, on the ground, block it. How they block it? By ensuring that first, Gaza and the West Bank are disconnected. Severing Gaza, sending it to the sea, to Egypt, to the laps of Egypt, anywhere. Just the biggest open prison, a standalone entity. So long as it's besieged in silence, can be slain and killed in silence, Gaza can survive. But the moment if Gaza stands for its rights, Gaza stands for its honor and land, Gaza will be slain. This is number one, because they know there will be no Palestinian state without Gaza, and there will be no state in Gaza as well. So that's number one. Number two, they have to keep the status quo of disunity, of separation between the Palestinians in the geographic and political sense. And that's Hazm exactly why Netanyahu did this coup d'etat against our unity government since started from Hebron. By the way, the attacks did not start in Gaza or on Hamas, started on us here in the West Bank, in Hebron, Jerusalem, and everywhere, as you have reported. This blocking of the Palestinian state is for the ideological project in the heads of this current right-wing government in Israel. And I'm not saying it's Netanyahu. You know, Netanyahu even sounds like a dog next to his ministers and
all right, you've made your point on that, Hassan. I want to get Yishai's view, and I want to.
The last sentence. They want to build a bigger Israel project.
I want to get Yishai's.
They want to build it.
I want to get Yishai's view on what some of what you just said there, and I want to talk, Yishai, about the proportionality of all of this. If, as you believe, Israel wants a peaceful end to this, why do we see this continued bombing of civilian areas in Gaza? And you know, when we look at the numbers of how many Palestinians have been killed, how many areas have been destroyed, compared to what's happened on the other side in Israel, I mean, why should it surprise you the amount of condemnation that has been heaped on Israel?
First thing, it doesn't surprise me, the amount of condemnation, but it also doesn't bother me, because after the Holocaust, the Jewish state Israel is there to defend the Jewish people, and that's our first goal. And if Hamas is going to fire 3,000 rockets, and they're going to try to hit our civilians, we're going to hit them back.
Hardly any of those rockets land. Hardly any of those rockets land in civilian-populated areas in Israel. You know that.
Right. I do know that, Chazam, and I have to take off my journalist hat and put on my rabbi hat for a second. Okay, the cab driver that I was with just now before I got here, he says to me, how is it that 3,000 rockets that Hamas sent have not really hit Israeli populations so much? We have had a few people killed, but mostly it has landed in open areas. And I put on my rabbi hat and I told them, it's min Allah, it's from God. It happens to be that there's 22 Arab countries around here. Allah loves the Arab world. He gives them oil from the ground. But this tiny place, Israel and Al-Quds, Jerusalem, is for the Jews. That's from Allah. It's in the Quran. And that's the only way I can explain how 3,000 rockets have hit the desert and have not hit Israel. There's no other way to explain it. It's not the Iron Dome, and it's not because Hamas don't know how to point a rocket. That's the only explanation that you could give. With regarding to Hussein, he is so funny because he's talking about this Arab unity. It's so funny. When Fatah was actually in charge of Gaza, Hamas came, put Fatah officials, probably friends of Hussam, on rooftops and kicked them off. There's no friendship between these people. He right now wants to represent them because he wants to fight for the Palestinian cause. And with one point do I agree. There is one point that I agree. And here now I'm not going to speak as a representative, and I'm not a representative of our government. I do agree that we stand against the Palestinian state. That is 100% true. We do not believe in that. That's been a mistake. Oslo was a mistake. The pullout out of Gaza was a mistake.
No, but you should point out, Yishai, there are many Israelis who would support a Palestinian state. You happen to be one of them that doesn't, and that's fine.
I'm your guest today.
What's wrong with? I mean, if a Palestinian state, a viable Palestinian state next to an Israeli one, leads to lasting peace, why wouldn't you support that?
We haven't seen anything like that. Hazem, we haven't seen anything like that. We have seen only a warlike state next to our state. I support much more Arabs and Palestinians living in our country, Israel, a united country with minorities, Arabs living in it. I think that that's going to work out much better. I don't believe in these divisions. I don't believe in cutting away our ancestral homeland and making a Palestinian war state. I do believe in those Arabs having the right to their houses, to their lives. I believe in them being incorporated in Israel. Right. And if you ask Arabs, right, the statistics show that if you ask Arabs, that's exactly what they prefer. They don't prefer to be under a state that Hussam is going to run and reach into their pockets and grab their money or kill their kids or whatever they do over there, or not have any liberty or freedom of speech. Okay, they don't want that. They want freedom, the kind that Israel offers.
I belong to a movement that is one of the greatest. I said it. I was born in the Rafah refugee camp, in the most impoverished situation ever because of the establishment of your country. Even though my father and grandfather, landlords, owned a huge amount of land. I was born in a tent of the UNRWA, and really, like the entire nation of mine, have invested in ourselves to go all the way to Harvard to teach the Americans, not only to go and learn.
Why is it that Egypt is against? Why is it that Egypt is against your tunnels?
So you need to know.
Why is it that your own countries are against?
I heard you. Stop these.
Hear your people. It's time for you to hear your people, not to hear me. Hear your own people. Every single person tells me the same thing.
No one's going to be heard if we're talking at the same time. Yishai, just let Hassan finish his point.
Stop cutting me. Stop cutting me. Stop cutting me. I hold a British nationality. I hold a PhD from the London School of Economics, and I lived in America for long years. Yet, I decided to come back here and to live here with my family and 2 children here. This is your problem. It's not about the form of the solution. Your problem is against my very existence. And I tell you, Rabbi, now you bought the hat of a rabbi. You know, you are not defending Judaism, nor you are defending even Israel. What you are doing now, you are defending Israel's expansion. You are defending Israel's colonialism. You are defending Israel's siege. You are defending Israel's wall. Come and live with us here. Go to Gaza and see the sheer injustice that is happening on a daily basis.
All right.
Go and sit in these homes in Gaza for 7
let's
years
just stay.
without electricity, without water, without basic. And
all right.
You've made
your point on that. You've made a point on. All right, you've made your point on that, Hassam. You've got to calm down. Let's try and let cooler heads prevail here. Let's keep the focus of this discussion back on Gaza, if I can. And I want to put this back. I want to put this to Yishai. The continued shelling of Gaza by Israeli forces has led to, by the last count, at least 1,700 Palestinians killed. On the Israeli side, we have 64 soldiers killed. That is the sort of proportionality that is unfathomable, no matter how you look at it. So if the argument is that Israel is targeting Hamas for continued rocket attacks into Israel, most of which don't even hit populated areas, I mean, how can you continue to justify this?
That is the most ridiculous question I ever heard in my life. Do you think I'm going to argue morality of war with the jihad? Israel, the small country,
I just want you to address. I just want you to address the fact that 1,700 Palestinians have been killed.
It's a war. It's a war, and we lament. And I tell you honestly, you may not believe me, but from the bottom of my heart, I have empathy for the Arabs that are killed, especially the children. It is a disgusting thing. It is a sad thing. It's a fact of life, though. When you war against Israel, you will get back war. Absolutely, and it will go on. If you war against us, we will war back. I tell you again that after the Holocaust, we are a little bit sensitive to the jihadist mentality, and those people that want to destroy the Jewish people in Israel will face our fire. And if they put their kids in front of it, God forbid, that's what happens. And Allah will have mercy on, will not have mercy on those, will have mercy on those who try very hard to not make that happen, but He will not have mercy on those who put children in front of a rocket fire. But I tell you the truth, if you continue to fire rockets, so that's what I'm speaking to Hamas now,
you've made your point on that, Yishai. Back to Hassam now.
Hazem, I kept hearing the rabbi, and I'd like to address him as a rabbi. I have all the respect with Judaism as a religion. My grandfather raised me in Rafah refugee camp after being ethnically cleansed, my grandfather and my father, from where Israel is now. He raised me to respect Judaism and Jews. He told me to eat with a Jew. So I have all the respect for Judaism. My problem, rabbi, is not with Judaism. My problem is with Judaization. And there is a big difference that you know it very well. You are Judaizing my land. You are Judaizing my culture. You are Judaizing my history. You want me to be a visitor in my land. You are negating my existence, my very existence. And the point I really want to focus on right now is this. And it's vital for our thinking and our future. What are we going to do? What are we going to do in this mess? And I believe first thing, Hazem, we have to focus on accountability. It was heartbreaking what happened in the last few weeks vis-a-vis the international system. It was a dent and a breakdown in the international system to hear some UN officials say Israel has the right to defend itself at the skulls of the kids. It was heartbreaking to see that the entire European Union bloc abstained from voting for a commission for investigation about the atrocities. It was heartbreaking to see the US describing the kidnapping of a soldier armed to his teeth, invading into Gaza as barbaric, yet all these murders, mass wholesale murders, are called Israel's right to defend itself. This is about time that we hold Israel accountable, Hazem.
All right, on that we are going to have to leave it. Thank you to both of our guests. We're going to have to leave it there. Unfortunately, we're out of time. We could obviously talk about this for a lot longer, but we are out of time. I want to thank both of our guests, Hassam Zomlot in Ramallah and Yishai Fleisher in Jerusalem. Thanks very much for your time. And thank you for joining us on another edition of Inside Story. Remember, you can also leave us your comments on facebook.com/AJ Inside Story, or just go to @AJ Inside Story on Twitter. I'm Hazem Sika. Bye for now.